What can I do for you, Mr. Ruddy?
I want to produce for Paramount.
You want to be a great producer? You do whatever it takes to get your movie made the way you want to do it.
It's his studio. We need hits. Paramount has fallen back to 8 out of 9.
Darling, you own The Godfather. I'll buy it today for $1 million.
Jack Warner, he offers me $1 million, we can get 3.
We're not going to get a better offer. Gangster movies are dead.
You are officially now Paramount's low-budget specialist. You've read The Godfather, right?
Francis, you're a true artist. We need that. You help Mario Puzo finish this script, we'll get you back on the floor.
There's somebody important who wants to talk to you. Get in the car.
You want to make a movie that's going to make my people look like animals, and that ain't going to happen.
The movie's fictional. It's not about anybody in real life.
Except it's an hunter, right?
Frank, I said I'm on it. You got nothing to worry about.
Can one fucking thing go right with this picture?
I put everything I have in every movie I've ever done. Big or small, it didn't matter. In looking back at my career, with 30-something movies and hundreds of hours of television, I wished I would have kept a record on each film, because each film is a world of its own. But everything that went into it, from the very beginning, from the concept to fighting it out to the editing and the script, everything, is each one is a world. And each one, you live with the values and the end result for your whole life, because film is up there forever.
I spent about 2 weeks interviewing Al Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather. Got it on tape and then printed up, and I had the transcription. And the anecdotes were coming out, and they're all lively and exciting. But I didn't hear the thing that made it, what reason there was to tell this story. Just being entertaining was not enough. And then Al said, making The Godfather, every day was the worst day of my life. And I thought, well, there it is. There's the reason to tell the story, because that's not what you would think. It's not what you'd expect. And it also meant that for every character in the story, getting this movie made or stopping this movie from being made was a matter of life and death, literally.
As a woman who grew up in an Italian-American family, and as a writer who has always been drawn to telling stories that involve criminals and the duality that exists within them, you know, the whole honor amongst thieves, The Godfather's always sort of just been the North Star for me. And then when I learned about Al Ruddy's incredible journey, I was sold.
So, you're the genius that Evans wants to produce the film that we shouldn't be making?
Yeah, that's me.
It's amazing that any film gets made in Hollywood, and I think that part of what makes a person successful in this town is persevering despite all odds and letting things, you know, roll off your shoulders and taking a ton of hits and keep on coming back for more. Clearly, it's Al Ruddy's story, and there's an obvious parallel between Al Ruddy and Michael Corleone. However, while Michael Corleone is a man who finds that it's his destiny to follow in his father's footsteps, I think Ruddy is very much a self-made man who does things on his own.
And Ruddy's very irreverent and swears and curses. I mean, he's 92 years old. He doesn't care anymore. He just says what he thinks and is completely transparent and honest in that way, which is a fantastic thing to be around. And because he has this incredible breadth of experience and knowledge and passion, that hasn't gone away. He's still saying to me, I got a script for you, kid. I got a script I want you to read. I want to produce our next movie. He's 92, and I'm like, there's a part of me like, well, that would be amazing.
We've been all over town. No one wants to make this movie for $4 billion, so I need you to produce it. Get going.
They offered him the job because no other producer would take it on. The budget was too small, so Ruddy went into Gulf and Western Building in New York.
Bob Evans said, I have to go to New York and meet the guy that owns everything, Charlie Bluedorn. I said, okay. I didn't tell Bob I hadn't read the book yet, but I read the book on the plane. I couldn't stop reading it. Well, 10 minutes after I'm in there, through the door comes this man. Hello, Ruddy, yeah, hello. I'm Al Ruddy. I'm there for 1 minute. 1 minute. He come here, I want to talk to you. I go in this office. He says,
So, tell me, Al Ruddy, what are you gonna do with this fucking book?
Which is a ridiculous question to ask anyone. It's a 600-page book. And what are you going to do with it? I knew I couldn't be rational giving a logical answer. I looked at Charlie, I said, I'm going to make an ice blue, terrified movie about people you love. Now, he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Ice blue, that's genius, genius. He gets some walks out of the room. So he asked us exec, I said, what the hell does that mean? He said, what does that mean? It means you're producing the movie.
Ice blue, baby.
Making a motion picture in general, but specifically one so loaded with body politics, we were very restricted financing. Charlie didn't want to make this movie for a long time. We finally had to put up our money, Francis and I. If this movie went over budget, we would have worked for nothing.
Ruddy, you and Coppola can get $6 million. But you both have to put up your fees against any overages.
The great thing about it, every piece that was necessary to get this grid up to standard needed a Bob Evans who told Charlie Bluedorn, as head of the studio, if you sell this book, I'm leaving Paramount. You don't understand. This is gold.
This picture can make Paramount #1, Charlie. I feel it. I feel it. My kishkas are screaming. That book's all anyone's talking about. Now you get the right hands at the wheel, and this can become a cultural phenomenon. The likes we've never seen before, like Rosemary's Baby, but bigger.
And stop Charlie. Charlie was going to sell this book to Jack Warner. Bob was smart. He saw what The Godfather was. And he backed us right to the end with Frankie Blanche and everybody else. He was a great politician. He really was. Everyone, I love Bob. People would say, well, you know, he's taking credit for part of this that they think should go to you. I said, wrong. He's the head of the studio. He represents this whole entity. He represents me and Francis and Marlon Brando and everybody else. And that's a big responsibility. And this guy never backed down on us, never.
Al's recollections of what it took to get this movie made were very rich and a fantastic jumping off point. However, it was in the writer's room that we sort of honed in on the character arcs and sort of distilled some of these fantastic anecdotes into a cohesive narrative.
Basically, there are three families in the movie. There's Copland and the family of the filmmakers. There's Robert Evans and the family of Gulf and Western, the executives, financiers, and Joe Colombo and the family of the mafia. And bouncing between those three families is Al Ruddy, trying to coax and trade and barter and hustle to be able to make good on his promises to the filmmakers, to make good on his promises to the studio.
But I can't greenlight unless I've got a budget and, what do you call them? Made of paper, roughly 120 pages long.
A script.
Oh, so you have heard of it. There is a God.
The real brotherhood, the crux of it, is Ruddy and Evans.
I'm not done.
And you could throw Coppola in there too. So you have these three brothers coming from different places, coming together to try to get this made, arguing like a family, like the three brothers might be arguing in the Corleone family. To us, it was important to follow each of their arcs and have each of them have conflict and have them not be there for each other at certain times and then call each other out on certain things. And, you know, Ruddy goes around Evans to get what he thinks is right for the movie, and it kind of destroys his relationship for a little bit. But they get back together because at the end of the day, they support the family. And when I say the family, I'm saying the movie The Godfather.
Once I came on board, I realized very quickly that the offer was also very much a commentary on what it means to have a movie made in Hollywood, how difficult that journey can be, especially when the material is so compelling and rich and good. And it just seemed that the stakes of this sort of life or death story were all sort of baked in.
It's an improbable story because from the beginning, Colombo was against the making of the movie as he was developing the Italian-American League and trying to get the onus of crime away from the Italian community.
And now the papers say they're making a movie of it.
And Ruddy knows that he has to approach him.
They don't want you making this movie. They say it's disrespectful.
Who's they?
The Italians back east. You're making a movie about them, you don't know who they are?
I wasn't a fool. I mean, I've dealt with some tough people in my life growing up. But as Mario Puzo said, I had to go meet the head of the Colombo gang to tell him not to kill Bob Evans. Right? It sounds like a joke. So Mario said, Al, are you insane? You're in the wrong league. You can't kid around with these people. Once you get involved, you will never get out. Not only I'm not going with you, but I don't want you to even tell me you know me. You are on your own. Well, that was the deal. Look, you're all in or you're all out on a movie. There's no question of this type. You gotta do everything. So I went to see Joe Colombo.
Do you know who I am?
Specifically, no. But with all due respect, I got...
I'm Joe Colombo. I gotta run things around here.
And I said, Joe, I'm not interested in doing the cliche, which you say gangster movie. I'm trying to show a part of the gangster culture parallels the American culture, of how it grows into an industry.
I may have a solution to our problem, as you put it.
I'm listening.
I'd love you to come by my office, and I'm going to do something that no one else in this town has done. I am willing to let you read the screenplay, which nobody has seen.
So Colombo did come up to his office with 2 or 3 of his guys, and Colombo picked up the script.
Page 1, he looks at it, he says, what does this mean, fade in? I said, well, it's just a filmic sense. It's black and the fade comes through as the fade goes in. That's Hollywood bullshit.
And then Colombo sort of thumbed through the script and then tossed it to one of his guys and said, read this. But the guy couldn't read it any more than Colombo could.
Finally, I said, Joe, what do you want? What can I give you that you can turn to your people and say, I got what we wanted?
I got this thing I'm doing. It's called the Italian American Civil Rights League. Our goal is to get people to understand there ain't no thing called the mafia. If you make this movie, everybody's gonna be saying that word all over the place. If I let you make this movie, I'm allowing exactly what I'm trying to eliminate.
And he said, I'll tell you exactly what I want. I want you to take the word mafia out of the movie. It was fairly simple to me because in the whole book, they hadn't read the book. In the whole book, the word mafia was used 1 time.
Wait, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Calling the writers. I'm telling them to search the script for the word mafia and cut it.
And that's how I started my whole relationship with Joe. I genuinely respected him. Look, I understand his position, who he was, and we became lasting friends for a long time. And when things went bad in my life, with Charlie Bluter, when I got fired for making my deal with the league, and he said, and we're out with the mafia too. I want you with the mafia. Everything's out. I got a call from Joe. Joe said, you know what now? Anything you ever need, Ruddy, and you need my help, I'm going to give it to you because you are a stand-up guy. You didn't try to bail out on us when everything went bad. I said, I'm not that way, Joe. So we became good friends. I actually was very fond of this man. I really was.
You would have loved it.
What the hell, Al?
I take you down here to pick me up for our first day of shooting.
The first that I had heard of Betty McCart was in Al Ruddy's stories, and I thought that there was something so compelling about a woman who he spoke about as if she was an assistant, and yet for some reason she was the go-to gal for Charlie Bluedorn. And I thought that there was a really, really interesting, compelling story in that.
How can I say? Betty was like a relative of mine. She cared about the work. She was very, very effective. She took me around, gave me a tour of the studio about the history of Paramount, because I didn't know anything about it. And so she became someone who became an enormous asset, really enormous at the point when Charlie Bluedorn started falling in love with her, you know?
Get me another glass of scotch. You crazy Austrian fuck.
Because of the time period that we were operating in, a woman in the 1970s navigating a fairly sexist world, it was interesting to give Betty some of the characteristics we might see a man have. So Betty was very proactive and had agency and was not just a prop in the storylines.
Al was the sort of great untold story and secret weapon of the entire production, really. So there's not only the added bonus of discovering this person and what he did and what he went through and how he, as a producer, got Coppola to the place where he needed to be in order to realise this film, because, you know, a great producer gives a platform to a director that allows them to create something iconic that 50 years later we're all talking about.
When I met Francis Coppola, the first thing I told Francis, I'm backing you, Francis. I'm going to get you everything I can as a director, and you're backing me. And you're going to stay on budget and do everything you can to make sure I don't get fired at the beginning.
You're there for me, I'm there for you. You respect the budget, you don't go over, and I will fucking kill for you, man.
I had a great relationship with Francis. I never had one problem in the whole shoot with Francis. He backed me, he saved me, I saved his job, he saved my job, and we got there together at the end.
The amazing thing about Ruddy is obviously his passion for film and his passion for The Godfather and getting this particular film made, who just wants something so badly and becomes a part of creating something so iconic and brilliant.
This movie's important to a lot of people I care about, so I thought I could help them out.
So my backstabbing producer turns up to save the day, even though he can't save himself.
When people ask me what does a producer do, I mean this to the bottom of my heart. Tell me what a producer doesn't do. A producer does everything. He's responsible for every damn thing that happens on that set, the politics, the money, and everything else.
You are one crazy motherfucker, you know that?
Takes one to know one.
I really did want to create an ensemble feeling, and it was really good because everyone saw what good company they were in, and that was very important for me to everyone to know that they were all there because they were so well matched and balanced and blended. That was always the aim, to create an ensemble that is, the highest possible level, and they could all see, oh, I'm part of this. This is where I'm at. That's what I said to them. It was like, you're all brilliant.
Nice car, sir.
You'd be surprised what a paint job will do.
Miles Teller is fantastic and a force in the story. He really captures Al's, drive and refusal to take no for an answer. Matthew Good is going to just blow people away as Evans. I found his performance revelatory and his transformation into Evans just amazing.
You don't have a long track record, but you got brains and you got balls. Try using both, preferably at the same time.
And Giovanni, I've had the pleasure of working with him on a couple of projects. I feel like I learn something every time I watch him work. He's just a fantastic actor. But the whole company, Juno, Dan Fogler as Coppola, just an amazing group of people.
And then you say the thing, is this you? Are you Al Ruddy? So by the time I land, I can say, yeah, that's me. Yeah, is that cool with you? Yeah, so I play the man, the myth, the legend, Al Ruddy. Al has a lot of passion. He was talking to me, and he, was basically telling me that, Miles, you could get anything you want in this business. You just gotta effing want it. And his face was so intense, man, and I loved it. That kind of fire still burning in him. And then he also said, if it doesn't work out with the offer, I have 2 other projects I think you'd be right for. He was still pitching me for gigs, and also what I remember from that is that he referred to the character as Al Ruddy. He was referring to it, that's a character in this piece. I think you would be great to play this character. But again, if it doesn't work out, I have 2 other projects I think you'd be perfect for. Look, Bob, they're great writers, but we need a fresh perspective.
It's strange when you look at someone playing Al Ruddy. You say, well, what, did I do that? Did I say that? I would have said it differently. In the old joke, and I say, I don't know, this guy better be great looking if he's playing Al Ruddy.
My biggest achievement as a producer so far is that Frank Sinatra's mad at me.
He is an amazing piece of talent. He's an amazing actor. And so when I met him, the guy is...
I fucked it up, baby.
I love this guy. I'm honored to have him play Al Ruddy. I really am. And I don't care if he's a little better looking than me, or a lot more charming than me, or more talented than me. He's playing Al Ruddy. So I'll tell all my friends, you see, that's what I was like.
Hey, Mark.
Mr. Miles Teller. I love him. I've had such an incredible time creating this journey with him of this dream team, and he makes me laugh. He has been brilliant with me when I have been very nervous about certain moments, and I really hope that chemistry shows on camera, because I think like he's somebody I have had such huge respect for such a long time and have always wanted to work with, and then to get the opportunity to not just work with him but do pretty much all my scenes with him has been a real gift and a pleasure. And his commitment to this project all round, you know, number one, sets the tone, and he really, really cares about this.
What do you like more, musicals or westerns?
Fred Astaire versus John Wayne. John Wayne.
I love Miles Teller. It's like working with a leading man out of the 1950s. And when you have somebody to parlay off of, and you can see that they're responding to certain things, and they're making you respond, this is what you strive for as an actor, really.
You know, I'm not doing an imitation of Al by any means, but I think if through this performance people are able to capture not just a linear version of his story and a timeline of events, to get a sense of that man, then that's great, you know. But it is something that I take very seriously, because it needs to be. It's their life you're telling, and that's not something you should take lightly. These were some really serious situations that Al was in.
Hey!
Hey, Joe.
This is pretty cool.
You borderline have to be kind of insane to do the stuff that he did to get this movie made, because he really did feel with every fiber of his being that this script was worth it, that these actors were worth it, that it was all worth it. So it's really been wonderful to portray him in that sense as well.
Miles is very intuitive, and we've had some really good conversations, and I know that he uses his instinct, but he also balances that really well with his craft. And conversely, Matthew, I think because Evans was such a huge character and very recognisable, that was a bit of a different kind of challenge, because you don't want to end up doing a bad impression of someone that is beloved and revered, and that's not what Matthew's in the business of.
It's a siege, Peter. We go back to the castle and lock all the doors.
I'm serious.
So am I. I'm not going to play defense. I'm going to counterattack, and there's going to be blood in the water.
I love him, and I think he'd be cancelled now. Bob Evans, I think, without a shadow of doubt, from a lot of the stories that I've heard. But I think, you know, he fits very nicely into that sort of 1970s. I mean, he was a bit of a legend. I mean, he was the man about town. Dexter was very keen to sort of, there's a fairly extraordinary tracking shot that we have of Bob entering a party, and everyone knows him, and he sort of walks through the house, and mountains of cocaine everywhere, and he walks out and, you know, lights up a cigarette, and it's this amazing house that we were in the valley, overlooking all of Hollywood, and that's what Dexter wanted to sort of convey, was that he's kind of the king of Hollywood at this moment, and he's about to have a very interesting ride, and then hopefully come back like a phoenix from the flames.
Well, let me guess. He's up your ass about paint your wagon overages. Lay off in the Clintons, which should be people not singing. That's entertainment. The box with the love story. The girl dies at the end. Who wants to see that? Something like that.
There's a lot of physical traits and voices and mannerisms that are real manna from heaven for an actor of his talent. He found this brilliant balance of creating the Evans that feels authentic and then feels, you know, like he's the man, but is not a sort of skin-deep caricature of someone.
Bob Evans is the movies, you prick. Why don't you stick to what you understand and know? Stocks and shares and watered-down cocktails with your Wharton groupies at the Carlisle, or whatever the fuck it is you do. But you stay off my lot now.
He spoke in a very odd way. I mean, not odd, he had his own cadence and rhythm, and so I was quite panicked when I got given the job. I was like, fucking hell, how am I going to pull this off? So I just, you know, you do your homework, and you sat in a room for a really long time, tried to do him. And I guess you want to give across the essence rather than it being an awful impression. I mean, we all know The Godfather got made, but one of the joys of the script is that there's so much tension.
Hey, beautiful. I did see Charlie right away.
I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. He's in an emergency boardroom meeting.
We know it was made, and yet when you're doing it, it seems like it could fall down at any minute. And I think that's one of the great, I mean, it's one of the best scripts I've ever read, I must say. It was Sometimes reading something is a joy. Sometimes the writing is so good that you go, I don't think even I can mess this up. I don't know. It's been. I think all of us would say it's a pleasure saying the words.
I told that fucking crooner I'd handle the goddamn movie. If he's trying to go around my back, he's gonna get his vocal cords broken.
It's not about the movie.
No, I'm sorry.
I had gotten a call that Dexter Fletcher wanted to have a conversation with me, and we dove into talking about Joe Colombo, and I looked him up, and then immediately I was like, is he crazy? Like, I'm the furthest, I think, from this guy. And so it was something that I was, probably one of the more daunting roles for me personally in my career. Really like the physicality of it and where he came from and the period aspect of it. He just existed in a different universe. I forget who said it was, but like if you're terrified of something, that's the moment that you know that you have to do it. One of the bigger challenges was the weight gain and the time frame that I had, and I had never really done that, and so it was a more or less, I guess, an interesting experiment to try to get my body to approximate Joe Colombo in 1970. And, it was 6,000 calories a day, and, I would, Sal Totino, the cinematographer, was making fun of me because one of the items on the menu, on the daily menu, was a full jar of peanut butter. He'd walk by me and, how's that peanut butter? But, you also are trying to do something like that in the healthiest way possible. And it's good also to be on the other side of that. And it's also challenging, and it's its own thing to, because I think we were in production for 6.5 or 7 months. It feels like it's been almost a year. But yeah, I'm on my bicycle now. And yeah. Joe Colombo, after the research and, getting past the sort of the superficial, what the press had to say about it, he was really kind of an extraordinary person. One of the things about him was that he was caught between two worlds, what he says or calls in The Offer, the old guard versus the new guard. And his approach to it was to, more or less go big or go home, really.
Take a picture.
How long have you been working with Mr. Colombo?
He was on the cover of Time magazine, which was just extraordinary. I think that's one of the first times that a boss had ever done that. And the old guard saw that as a threat. The Italian-American Civil Rights League was something that the first one in 1970, 50,000 people showed up. And it was this huge thing. And, obviously, as the story goes, we'll find out, but he didn't really make it, even through the second one.
If you go in that direction, this guy will show you how to get off. Thank you. And we'll let you know, okay? Interestingly enough, when this beautiful project came into my universe and I started looking for information about Betty McCart, there isn't a lot about her. I had to kind of, I guess, create something more fantastical. And that was really fun because I got to go down a wormhole of research of that sort of reasons why she would want to be in the film world and why walking into Ruddy's office would be a really important moment for her. And I think ultimately, in my perception of it, it's like the closest she could get to magic in real life. She really believes that making films can be a version of magic on Earth that is kind of unlike anything else. You're still gonna try and make this thing? Getting to play a character that is behind the scenes of making a film but has the same admiration and that ultimately also is fascinated by actors is, what a privilege. It's, one of the coolest projects probably I'll ever get to do in my life.
Francis.
Hello. Hey, Francis. What was crazy was my representation. They want you to audition for Francis, okay? So I get the audition, and it's for Mario Puzo. And I go, okay, I'll audition for Mario, but can I also audition for Francis, since you guys mentioned it? And they said, yeah, sure.
The Godfather is a story of men who form their own justice, okay, out of loyalty, not law. But at its core, this is a story about family. It's always family.
So I ended up auditioning for both. I auditioned for Mario and Francis.
Not a bad night.
Oh my God, that's Frank Sinatra. Is that Frank Sinatra?
And that's also Jilly Rizzo, Frank's very tough but very good friend.
And I also do the lines off camera. I record them off camera. So I'm doing Pacino with Francis.
They want to fire me, don't they? Hey, come on, no, we're not gonna let that happen. Okay, come here, I wanna show you something. When you get in here, you're nervous, okay? Yeah, that won't be a stretch. But you're trying not to show too much of it out there, but in here.
And I'm doing Sinatra with Puzo, okay?
You Mario Puzo? You know me, wow.
You're the rat who wrote that fucking book about a degenerate singer.
Mr. Sinatra, I've been an admirer of yours since I was a kid.
Look. I can't choose my fans, especially fans who make up a story that insults Italians and a singer world famous.
And I thought that that's what a director would do, because I really wanted to play Francis. So I was like, yeah, a director would play all the parts, and he would know how he would want it. So I basically sent them 4 auditions, and I'm glad I spoke up because I got Francis, which is great.
Where are you going with that knife? I'm going to cut the fat so that I can then brown it. What's the matter?
When I first got here, I had this like Airbnb, and my wife and my kids were coming to visit, but I had a couple rooms open in the house. And just as a synchronicity, I just met Patrick in rehearsal, and he was like, yeah, I'm looking for a place to live. And I was like, all right, I'll take a risk here out of, you know, the love of the game and like the love of the actors who worked in the movie, the method actors. I was like, let's get method here, man. So he was my roommate for the first, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks of shooting. And it was great, man. It was probably the smartest thing I ever did.
I could get used to this. It's ball freezing weather in New York right now. You know, we said good morning. We had an entire day together, entire night together, and then we'd say good night. So in between the good morning and the good night, we were around each other. We were laughing. We were exploring each other's, humor and how we existed, and having difficult times and having, rewarding times, and discussing the film and discussing Coppola and Puzo all the time and watching films. So we got to just kind of like understand each other and really be in each other's orbit. And we became friends. The gift of that occurring, that we could bring that to set, and we never had to talk about it. It just existed in the scene. Our relationship outside sort of enhancing and coloring Puzo and Coppola.
Just like Francis and Puzo must have hung out 24/7 in adapting The Godfather to screen. You know, that was a big risk. He could have been a real jerk, but he was great. He was great. So it was cool. All the moons were aligned with that.
Mr. Director!
Charlie, can I get a minute?
No! Charlie Bluedhorn, as Barry Diller, the last head of Paramount under Charlie, said that he was a romantic businessman. The guy worked his way up to the head of this conglomerate, but I think what he didn't lose was an instinct for people who take risks and who are led by passion.
Brilliant! You come!
He saw things in Evans and Betty and whatever. He saw hustlers, grinders, people who were going to do what it takes in order to get the deal done. When he celebrated a deal, because that was what was important to Charlie, it was the deal, he would jump up and down on his couch. He certainly had no restrictions as to how he would shout at people, but ultimately the passion of somebody like that, again, is what interests me.
I've seen the dailies. They're terrible, they're too dark, and what's with the fucking cat? I couldn't hear a thing of the goddamn purring.
As an actor coming to a character like that, I've got 2 choices. I can either give a very safe performance where I'm very conscious about the size or tone of what I'm doing, or what I prefer to do is to present a character who you're not sure what they're gonna do next.
You're out of your fucking mind, you crazy Austrian fuck.
And it's a bit of a risk as an actor because, it's a large performance, but ultimately I feel like I want to honor Charlie's spirit, and that's how I've been led.
Barry Lapidus.
Alvin Sargent.
Did you need something, Barry? He can wait. I think I'm gonna sit in on this meeting, so please. Lapidus is kind of the bad guy in a movie filled with a bunch of different bad guys, but he's the more corporate kind. He is basically a composite of every single person that did not want to make The Godfather. I remember talking with Dexter Fletcher, before we shot the pilot. He said, you're the bad guy with a smile. You're the evil suit. And normally, when you have those kinds of roles, they can kind of be one-dimensional. But we discussed quite a bit the fact that every reason that Lapidus has as to why this is a bad idea, from his perspective, makes perfect sense. We should be making what the people want to see, right? Airport, a thriller in the sky, MASH, funny doctors. Again, entertainment. He's not necessarily an artistic type. He's much more of a dollars and cents type man. But he also sort of represents the old Hollywood and the old way of filmmaking, the kind of rigid sort of studio structure that Coppola was very much the opposite of. Look, this is how it's going to be if you want to make this movie.
Wow. Very, very interesting, Barry. Thank you very much for bringing that imagination to the party.
It's interesting playing one of the voices speaking against something that has become so iconic, because I think it's interesting to be able to show that, those are conversations that actually did sort of transpire.
Here we go. Good luck. Let's roll, please. Rolling. Action.
I felt that just trying to emulate the look of The Godfather alone was not going to be adequate, because we are outside of the world of the film. We're on the periphery of it. And so it was then about making decisions and choices of our world, that we were creating, and our period, and those looks and feels that were outside of the film. And then I had people like Sal Totino and Michael Kaplan, incredible costume designer, and Lawrence Bennett. And then that's the great beauty of directing, is you choose great people and then you sit on a chair in the middle and nod at things that people show you that are fantastic.
Moving on.
The production designer of any film is, with the director and the cinematographer, one of the three visual authors of the project. What I do is conceive and design the world of the story. With the location department, location manager, I find and select the locations we'll be filming in that are not stage set. And with the assistance of my art directors and set designers, graphic designers, we design and build all the built sets on stage. I also oversee set decoration, props, and liaise with, to an extent, hair and makeup, visual effects, and practical effects. Pretty much every significant department, there's some sort of contact and collaboration with the art department. The documentation available to me in research obviously of what was going on in Hollywood and New York. Business world at that time is pretty clear. The West Coast, Mediterranean light and warm and open. New York, chill and older and grittier, and including in the Gulf and Western world. But it's not possible to get entree to documentation from criminal side of what was going on within those crews. So that's the place in which we really had to use our imagination and just kind of take license and vamp.
And door.
The first set we started working on was Gambino first and then Columbo. And both of them were very different. I mean, Columbo's younger, he's a hot shot. Gambino's, old world, the older Italian guy, so his club had to really feel like you were, in Rome somewhere, or somewhere very old school, where we made Columbo's be kind of flashy. He had a groovy pool table. Everything was a little bit groovier. And Giovanni Ribisi, who plays Columbo, he kind of is a very flashy actor and what he brings to it. And he had an input into his club, because he definitely wanted certain things in there, and he's like, can we push the politics? You know, he really wanted there to be stuff that was sitting on the desk that Joe Colombo really got into.
The main world of the offer, set in 1967 to 1972 on both coasts. You know, we just took a generally cinematic approach, trying to pay homage, obviously, to some of the visual sensibility of the original piece, particularly in and around portrayal of the film itself, but mostly just trying to find a cinematic language of its own for our project, to tell the story of this insane process of trying to get this movie made. I'm not alone in this process. Everyone in the art department has contributed. Lisa, the set decorator, and people who support her, but my art directors and set designers, even the PAs, everybody has taken a role for themselves in researching aspects of this film. This is the kind of project that encourages people to have a passion for their work that's a little above and beyond what they would ordinarily have. For example, in designing the Don's office, that set, so reproducing that accurately was obviously tremendously important to us. So that involved a very detailed forensic frame-by-frame look at the picture and digging every detail we could out of the shadows.
The desk that we're shooting right now in the Don Corleone's office, that's not the real desk. The real desk is in Francis Coppola's vineyard right now. So we had all the research, all the pictures. I bought a desk, had sculptors carve the flowers, because the real desk has carved flowers on the legs and everything. And then the painters built me a top to match the color. So it was 3 different departments working on it to recreate the desk. And you know, everybody doubted us. They were like, you're never gonna be able to get this desk. And I said, no, you guys gotta have faith. We're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. We've been working on it for a couple months now. And you know, it just got finished on Thursday, and it's now in the set right now. And it looks spectacular.
Good morning, Bob.
Well, it should be. And it would be, Peter, if I didn't have to watch the rushes for Tarzan and the Jungle Boy last night.
Bob Evans's office. Bob seems to have been quite a character. He was obviously a very strong icon of Hollywood at the time. I've never encountered anyone I've been involved in portraying who was so fond of photographs of himself and had so many in his house and in his office. We tamed that down a bit, and it still looked ridiculously excessive. But you know, Matthew's portrayal of him is like so warm and open and vibrant. We tried to put a little bit of that into the environment. And we altered the taste level and some of the finishes a bit to make it a little less gaudy. The 1970s was not exactly the high point of American decor.
Why do you move the scene up today?
I just wanted to give you a chance to shine.
Louis' restaurant. We were so freaked out about Louis' restaurant. It was like, we're never gonna be able to recreate this. How are we gonna redo this? It's a place that was in the Bronx that was a restaurant in 1970, but they're shooting it for 1940, and it's 2021. And my assistant, Natalie, who grew up watching The Godfather with her mother every week, this is her dream job. She worked for months, and she'd show me stuff, and I'd look for stuff. The chairs, every little detail, she knew backwards and forwards, and she didn't stop. I mean, she went to antique stores all over LA, and, you know, we just kept going, and, you know, everybody couldn't believe how perfect it looked. I mean, it really looks like the movie.
I think to date we've done something like 168 sets, and every one of them says something, and says something in contrast and in response to the others. And the variety of all those textures and qualities has been, you know, a very attractive part, a very big appeal of the work to us.
We tried to pull all the props from the original movie and put them into this movie, doing a lot of research, looking at a lot of pictures. What my job is to make the actors believe that everything is real. So whether or not we're ever really going to see it on camera doesn't apply to me. It has to be there. Some of the scenes would be the recreations of Best in Company when he comes out the door with an armful of presents and she's got a shopping bag. We had to custom make the shopping bag because we didn't have a 1970s shopping bag in our back pocket. And we printed it exactly or as close as we could, and we tried to match the presents exactly as we could for Pacino's character. For Giovanni, who's a very wonderful actor, I've worked with him many times, I knew he was going to be in the character. And sure enough, from day one when he walked into rehearsals, he was already Columbo. And the first thing he wanted to know, well, I had this pin, or Columbo had this pin on this thing, and I pulled it out and handed it to him, and he was like, wow, great.
Listen, it was his brilliant idea to go from Western, donate the proceeds from the premiere to the league's hospital fund.
He got it just perfect. I mean, it was really great. And he wore that, and a lot of people wore that pin. And so it was just an important factor there. That attention to detail and that support really comes through. And then ultimately, you know, it is meaningful for an audience, I think. It's just something that you can sense more than really put your finger on it.
He knew from the beginning that we had him covered and that he was going to be Columbo in the show.
Do you remember the budget?
Ruddy's briefcase. When he opens his briefcase, when he's on set, he's got a handmade budget. He's got a schedule. I found a collection of Brando's paperwork, which had schedules and call sheets and all this really interesting paperwork that was really helpful in recreating the paperwork for the show. And that's what we do. There's a couple of other things that were from real life from the movie. The first being Francis's prompt book. And when I first opened the script and started reading, I said, prompt book. I had no idea what a prompt book was. So I Googled it online. The next thing I know, there's a video of Francis with his prompt book explaining every page and what it was. And basically it was his guidebook where he got the Godfather book, he read it, made notes in the book, and then from there, he cut all the pages out of the book and pasted it into another book and put notes around those pages, and he made this giant book that's probably this thick of all his notes from the movie, and it was his Bible for the movie. So I hired this really creative graphics person, and she started, and about a month later, she had it all figured out and done. Every page of the book, plus added notes that he wanted to put in for other things, important things, synopsis, themes. One interesting prop was, back in those days, when they did the schedules for movies, they had this thing called the board, which you'll see in the movie. It's a big red cardboard thing that unfolds, and it basically has everyday shooting in little strips. And you can take the strips and you can move them around, and that's the way they used to make schedules back then. So I found the board, and I needed to find the strips. So I called the guy that had done strips for another show, and it turns out he was a second AD for Francis on all the movies after The Godfather. But he knew Francis, he knew what I was looking for, and he put together a whole board for me, probably pretty darn close to what was really done back then, with every strip for the right scenes in the board.
Action!
And then an exact replica of Mario Puzo's typewriter that he typed The Godfather on. We were able to get a couple of these. The Mitchell camera that we brought, that it was an exact match to what they had. The same dolly, the same head, the track, and everything was the same. And you know that the camera people on our show now couldn't load that camera if they had to. You know, I've been around for a while, so I remember all this stuff. Some of the stuff was still around when I started, so it was very helpful going back to my past to remember some of the stuff that I saw as a young kid starting out.
There's one little weird thing about my crew also. One of my guys, his grandfather was the special effects person for Francis and got the horse's head. So when we started, Jason's like, you know, my grandfather's the one that got the horse. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. You know, I said, I don't even want to know how he got all that stuff. And it had been a thing where Francis wasn't happy with the fake horse, so then they went and got a real one.
It's not fucking real, right?
No.
Working very closely with the hair department, we created looks for everybody, worked with costumes very closely. And obviously we have to make sure every character is individual to themselves. So the girls don't have the same colored hair, they don't have the same looks. So, you know, it has to look exactly right for their individual characters. Got a hell of a lot of men in this show, and with lots of facial hair, having to make sure we're going with the 70s period, doing the same for all the background, keeping the, you know, the design and the detail very precise. With Miles, we're getting him into our Ruddy every day. It's just as much as a challenge because, you know, you've got to keep up with everything being exactly the same. You've got longevity of keeping their skin clean and all the sideburns. He has his own little sideburns that I make and put those on every day. So it's a lot with all of them, but it's just making sure their characters are just kept very together. And, you know, it's never about the makeup, but it's nice when you can create makeup to create a character.
For me, finding characters and getting into the clothing combined with hair and makeup all together, it's like one of the most exciting processes. You know, because I come in the morning and then I go and see Renee and she believe it or not, puts a wig on me, which this is the best wig I've ever seen in my life. And then Katie puts my face on, and then I get to go into my trailer and see what Amy has presented for Betty to put on to go to work that day. And it really is the stages that help me become Betty. I think it's proper teamwork that.
I like my wigs to move. I like it when people don't know it's a wig. That's my goal. And Juno has been fun. Like, I've got to do tons of looks on her. And she's got that beautiful blonde wig that was made by Rob Pickens. And so we're very grateful for that. And we literally, every look she has, except for the look we're gonna do for the Academy Awards, it's that wig.
Renee, she's an amazing hairstylist, and what was incredible is she designed the wig. She didn't just design wigs, she really looked at the scene, looked at the emotional arc of the scene, and built the wigs around that emotional journey that the characters are having. Like the scene with Betty, where I come to see her, ask her what's happening, what is Hal hiding? You know, she just put me in a wig that was like this big and very powerful, and you know, I think every detail makes sense.
She was super fun, super fun. I think when it all came together the way it was supposed to, she was very pleased and everybody was pleased. So that was a nice little cherry on top.
Giovanni, like, I love him. He's an amazing, great actor. And he was just such a pleasure to design a makeup with because we were able to shave the whole of his head. He keeps that shaved all the time. He has one little tiny bit of hair here. And then we have a little toupee little hairpiece that we got made that makes a comb over. So he wanted to be as close as he could to the character. And the real character was, you know, real big comb over. So yeah, we've created that on him, and he's put on 30 or 40 pounds, something like that, on weight to go with it. So that's a really nice development of character together.
The suits that were made for Robert Evans are beautiful. You know, they're just beautiful. My name is Amy Stavsky. I'm the costume designer on The Offer, and welcome to the costume trailer. For The Offer, we needed to copy the suit that James Caan was wearing when he beat up the Johnny Russo character. And basically, when you see him in the fight scene, the collars always match the lapel. We have a template for the collar of the period, so it was easy enough to make. The tie we painted, which was quite a venture because we painted 4 of these, you know, to duplicate the work that Ann Johnstone did on The Godfather. And then we also built the suit that Johnny Russo was wearing. We found the fabric because it was actually in these colors, which, you know, was quite a choice for the 1940s. And so we built this for Johnny. Additionally, in the Godfather scenes, we were fortunate enough to find a suit that matched pretty nicely with the suit that Marlon Brando wore when he's shot at the fruit stand. Again, the wonders of costumes, a pretty good coat as well. So that was great. That was a win-win. Robert Evans' beautiful wardrobe speaks for itself. You see a lot of pictures of Evans in coats like this. They were a staple, but he was beautifully manicured all the time. You know, beautiful ties and shirts. You know, all the shirts were made for him. His collars were exceptionally large. You know, always with the signature, always with the 2-button closure. You know, you find the details when you live with the characters for a while. What we've tried to do with Betty was build her as her involvement with The Godfather grows, and as her salary grows, she does too. And as her experience in New York grows, she's affected by the fashion around her. So we wanted a great signature piece that would be recognizable. So we found this, and Juno loved it, so it was a great way to go.
Hi. Hello. Well, I've already introduced myself, but I'm Izza.
And this is a recording session for the opera. Danger, drama, romance is the vibe. So, you know, feel free to just pour your heart out as you will. And thank you very much.
Isabella is obviously fantastic, and we all heard her samples and things and thought, wow, she's the one to do this. Not because her music or samples sounded anything like the Nina Rota score. Because, again, like the movie, that's canon. So for Isabella, the challenge is we're not making The Godfather, we're making behind the scenes of The Godfather and the making of The Godfather. So at times that tone is going to be fun because we do play into the humor a lot, and at times it's going to be intense. And the intensity should never feel like we're listening to the Rota score. It should really feel more like it's part of the movie that we're making.
Oh, that's so cool. You guys are so cool. Thank you.
Getting to the bottom of what it is, what the soundscape of the story is, right? So we're in 1967 to 1973 in this particular story, and leaning into the mafia, leaning into Hollywood in that time. So I think like getting an understanding of what the sound is of the show, whether or not you're going to have real drums, real strings, like is it synthesizers? It's painting a picture over the picture and then kind of like leaning in certain moments. I've had a lot of notes coming back saying less melodrama, and I'm like, but it's a machine. It comes out of my soul. So, but it's interesting, like reshaping things and like toning things down, and like sometimes just the simplicity of one instrument when I'm writing for a whole orchestra, and then paring it all back down, and you've got this one thing and it's powerful enough. A lot of the strings that we recorded today are underscoring the gangsters, and it's somewhere between that and, you know, this kind of, I wanted to get a little bit of James Bond, John Barry in there. Because Ruddy is really carrying the story through, and when you listen to John Barry's early scores for like From Russia with Love or Dr. No, you know, they're very percussive and they have these amazing string runs in them, and it's just like super fun for me to uncover those elements for this score. So I'm trying to get bits of those in Al Ruddy, a little bit of Lalo Schifrin, leaning on this danger that's happening with Joe Colombo all the way through the story. There's a very fine line between like danger and horror. We're trying very much not to be in the horror genre, but keeping it sophisticated and Sicilian and like, you know, dangerous, essentially. So that's a lot of what we recorded today at Capitol. So live everything is what we're striving for here. And actually what it is a bit of egg borrow steal in terms of how I'm recording. So I'll be like, you know, recording drums here and then being able to do the strings at Capitol felt like a really important moment because, you know, we've got the best room in the game to get that sound. And then there'll be horns. Tomorrow I'm going to be recording, so it's all going to come together in the end, and I have to piece it all and put everything in its right place. I'm hoping that what I'm achieving is the right elements that Nino Rota would have used in The Godfather without stepping on any toes.
There she is.
What power!
That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Like, wow.
I didn't come from a very rich family. I kept certain disciplines in my family. And when I had to do a job, generally in my life, I did it. I discounted a lot of the dangers and the price I had to pay for some of the things I did, incidentally. They didn't all work out. But there was no question in my mind when Bob called me and told me his life was threatened. I said, I'm in for a nickel, I'm in for a dime. And Mario said, what are you doing? Don't play with these people, you'll never get out. That didn't enter my mind. It had to be done, so I had to go. I didn't think twice. I got my stuff together, I went right out to meet Joe Colombo, and it all started.
It's hard to find somebody to say a bad word about him, you know, and if you talk to a lot of the people that were involved with Godfather, almost unanimously, they say that is the guy you want in your corner. So he's not afraid to fight for it, but at the same time, I think he also kept a pretty good moral compass. And even today in this business, I think there's some, you know, untrusting kind of self-serving personalities, and Al's not that.
The whole thing is so amazing when I look back at it. Mario needed that deal. Bob Evans needed for the studio. Charlie needed to save Paramount. I needed it because I did Hogan's Hero. And if we weren't voted and have a need for success on this one, it never would have happened.
So just enjoy this moment because the world will remember it forever. A couple of photographs, then we're going in. Let's do it.
You know, when you get to The Godfather, this really took my imagination and all of my cinema history excitement and tied it all together in this amazing bundle, you know, to be able to tell Al Ruddy's story, to tell the story of how such an amazing film came together.
Really good. Who'd like to film some Coppola?
Yes! Come on! And to be able to tell that, dramatise that, realise that, and be a part of that legacy, I mean, became something that was undeniable. To be able to just pay homage to that incredible film and that incredible filmmaker and just feel part of that, something that is, you know, 50 years old and so beloved, but so iconic and so seminal.
I laugh at myself because as much as I've worked in this business for 50 years myself and grown up in it, there's still a part of me that's naive enough that when I see a great piece of work, I succumb to this notion that it just dropped from the heavens, you know, whole cloth in the form it was, you know. There's a part of you that when you watch The Godfather, you can't believe that it could have ever been anything else other than what it is, because every choice in it is so perfect, every choice in it resonates so beautifully, that how could there have been an argument about any of these broad stroke decisions? But to be immersed in the film and see like, no, none of this just happened. All of it had to be sweated over, fought about. People went to the mat, putting their careers and their fortunes, and in some cases their lives at risk to see this realized in exactly this way. And I just found that very inspiring.
I've seen probably Godfather 1, probably 100 plus, Godfather 2, probably 200 plus times. There is something universal in Michael Corleone's struggle. I've always been drawn to the theme of not being able to escape who you are, where you come from. It's something that permeates through every piece of writing that I've ever put out in the world.
And there are a million different miracles that need to happen in order for anything to get made. Just because it's remembered as one of the most important films of our times doesn't mean that it was all easy. And so, you know, I hope that people really walk away with a better understanding of just how unique The Godfather actually was, because they were actually able to pull it off.
You know, you're approaching making a story about the making of The Godfather, and, you know, as an actor, it's so intimidating. You know, secretly you've probably been imitating Al Pacino or doing, you know, trying to have that approach, you know, in various jobs and things that you've been doing, whether that's conscious or not. Because, you know, I think we're all standing on the shoulders of these guys.
I really, really don't think jobs like this come along very often, where you get to, you know, be a part of telling the history of something that made history.
Yeah, that's the spot.
Yeah. Watching The Godfather for me was something my father showed me and said, this is a really important film. And I remember being so devastated with the sequence of Sonny getting shot and really not quite understanding how to recover from that, because of how human all those people are in that film. And then Brando, just the transformation that he did, and the scene where he finds out that his son is dead, and the holding back of the tears. I remember really thinking, wow, so much can be said without having to let everything out. And that's what I love about film and TV, is it's all about a camera catching moments, and it doesn't have to be huge. Some of the best things are said quietly, you know?
And the winner is Ruddy. Yeah! Yeah!
I became an element in the perfect storm. And everyone out there, when I got my Academy Award on The Godfather, I did say that to America, I really did. I said, everyone sitting out there who dreams this kind of thing can happen. It can, that's what I said, because I believed it. If you care, it can. And that's how I feel about my life, and that's how I feel about the people I work with. I'm proud. I'm really proud to be in this business. I really am. It means a lot to me.
There you go, boss. Beautiful, androgynous God. I think he's sexy.
I really think that he felt, you know, he had put so much into The Godfather, and that went beyond his, I think, wildest dreams of how well it all turned out. The fact that he was comfortable enough with himself and his career to be able to walk away from what he knew would be a huge smash, Godfather Part 2. But he was also a writer, you know, with The Longest Yard. That was another challenge. Nobody thought a sports movie was, audiences didn't have an appetite for that. And he proved them wrong again with that. And, you know, and he did it kind of throughout his career. You look at Cry Macho, which he just did with Clint Eastwood. That was a movie, he said he had that script for like 40-some years. And Clint called him up one day and said, "You still got that Cry Macho script, kid?" And then they did that at 91 years old. So that says a lot about the man.
I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. And I got very lucky in my life. I met the right people at the right time, and everything worked out good.